Good day. Welcome to the TreasuryONE weekly market update. Today we've got our currency strategist Andre Cilliers joining us. So Andre, currently at the moment there's three driving forces that we're seeing in the market. What are they that we're seeing at the moment?
The three main drivers that we're currently seeing is, in my opinion, the medium-term budget speech on the 28th, the US election coming up in America, and then, of course, the whole COVID-19 and second wave infection going through Europe and Americas.
So mentioning that local budget speech coming up on the 28th, which was due actually on the 21st, but our finance minister asked for a week delay. After the economic recovery plan by Cyril Ramaphosa last week, what are your expectations that we can see from the medium-term budget speech?
Yeah, firstly, let me mention that the 1 week extension wasn't such a bad or negative piece of information. It was simply linked to the economic recovery plan that Mr. Ramaphosa presented in Parliament. And due to that, Mr. Mboweni just needed a little bit more time to get his little ducks in a row before he could deliver the speech. What can we expect? Well, it's very, very difficult. I think the negative news is quite obvious. Mr. Ramaphosa has now delivered his recovery plan, and in that he mentioned that there could be privatization or listing of some of the state enterprises. But I think the main thing about his recovery plan that it was very short on the actual how things will be done. And I think that's what the people are looking towards the medium-term budget speech, is to get a little bit more clarity from Mr. Mboweni as to how the recovery plan will be implemented and how it will be funded. And the funding of that is, of course, the major one, because we know that the purse is empty and we have to rely on borrowings. Apart from that, he's going to give us the statistics, as I always call it, the barometer on how we stand and where we stand with the economy, and that is negative. We know that. We just really know to what extent. But he will tell us that, and that will be an honest game from Mr. Mboweni as we know him. And that's going to be, as I say, very negative. We know that our borrowings are going to up, but the main thing is that we expect is a little bit of the how the recovery plan will be implemented and what can we look at in terms of funding and privatization from state entities.
Okay, thank you. And then back to the US elections as a key driver is obviously the polls looks like it's going to be a blue sweep by the Democratic Party in the US and Joe Biden. How does a Biden victory over Mr. Trump going to have an impact on international markets?
Well, yes, it is a blue wave, and one can expect that if Mr. Biden wins, that there will be a little bit of a relief in the tensions between the US and the China trade war, firstly. Secondly, we know that there will be a further stimulus plan, whether it be implemented by the Republicans or by the Democrats becomes a little bit immaterial. We know that that will happen. We know that that will cause more borrowing. We also know that Mr. Biden inherits quite a, in inverted commas, bankrupt state of affairs. So Mr. Biden will definitely, as I see it, cause a little bit of a weakening of the stock markets and a weakening of the US dollar currency. Now, I think the US dollar currency at this stage is a bit of a manipulation between whatever happens in the US elections and the Federal Reserve, because you need some weakening of the currency so that you can start creating inflation. Of course, that's a great reason for concern that if the inflation happens too fast, it becomes hyperinflation, and that's very, very negative as well. But that's certainly what the Federal Reserve would like to see, not hyperinflation, but increased inflation. And Mr. Biden will definitely assist in that.
Okay, and then back, obviously, emerging markets is performing negatively, and it's in the back of all this resurgence in second wave COVID cases we've seen across Europe. We've seen Wales announcing today that they'll have a 2-week lockdown starting on Friday. How is COVID-19 playing out for emerging markets currently?
I think that is a reason of concern because Europe is one of our biggest trading partners. And if Europe goes into more lockdowns and closing of markets, it will obviously have an effect on the growth of the economy there. It will obviously have an effect on the spending of the European consumer. And that will dramatically impact on what they import and export. And we've seen this morning that the red list of countries, for instance, that South Africa have for tourists coming in now includes Germany, it includes Belgium, it includes Spain. So a lot of countries that previously could actually come in as tourists is now being banned. But that simply is because of the second wave that are happening and resurging in Europe. Interesting enough that we see that Sweden is also now where they've had the attitude of having no lockdowns and no real regulations, is also moving towards that area of regulations or recommended regulations. So a negative impact, and for us as South Africa, being one of our biggest trading partners, it will severely negatively impact and on our possibility and ability to grow the economy.
So looking at all these factors and taking it all into consideration, what can we expect for our lovely currency, the dollar rand, going forward?
Well, it's a mixed bag. A mixed bag in the sense that if we cannot export to Europe and that is negative for us, that would be in itself negative for the currency. But then on the other hand, I think the biggest factor would be if Mr. Biden wins, and we do see weakening of the dollar, and we do see increased strength from the side of US-China trade wars, then that will be positive for the emerging markets and that will be positive for the rand. So my bet would be that we could see some volatility. We could see possibly a 1680 being traded in the very near term, especially taking into account the medium-term budget speech. But after that and after the announcement of the US elections, and that's in case there is a Biden win, I would expect the rand to strengthen and we could see a breach of the 16 level.
Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a lovely week.
Thank you.